if you stumbled across this channel, you would see I like God of War. And you'd be right. With all 4 videos I have, 3 related to God of War games. Anyways, after making a 2-hour video talking about God of War, and taking a few years off my life trying to figure out how to edit, I decided to try something more simple. A tier list on the God of War games. Because me liking the games. And the rumor of the remasters possibly coming out. So I said, screw it, I'll make a tier list on it. And hopefully in a few months, they'll announce the remasters. But if not, then, who cares? I'll voice my opinion anyways. Also, I won't get too crazy in depth. It'll really come down to how much fun I had playing it and the replayability of the game. So I'm not expecting to go super in depth. So that's about it. Let's rank the games. God of War Ascension, the last hack-and-slash God of War game before switching to the third-person action-adventure in God of War 2018. Ascension for a story doesn't really add much to the God of War story as a whole, or Kratos. It's more so, hate to say it, just to make money. Not shitting on the people who made it. The people who made it clearly had passion and worked very hard on it. And it is a fun game, but in my opinion, it really only exists because Sony was just like,
we're gonna need that angry pale man to come out of retirement.
So the story is Kratos gets screwed over, tragic past, you get it. I will say they do make him more sympathetic in this game, showing how much he loved his family, his friendship with Orcos, and saving a random Greek dude from getting hit by a spear right here. But enough story, how about the gameplay? As a whole, the gameplay is pretty fun, very smooth as usual. Although instead of getting new weapons along with the Blades of Chaos, we instead just get different variations of the Blades of Chaos, like the Zeus, Hades, Ares, and Poseidon variations. And overall, I think it's just okay. I will say the magic you get with it is cool, but the physical attacks are basically just the Blades of Chaos with different colors. However, the Orcos Oathstone is really cool and fun to use in battle, and the amulet that slows on time is pretty sick as well. The bosses have their ups and downs. The intro boss as a whole is pretty darn fun. It's a possessed insect hand monster. Who doesn't love that? You fight a dragon thing and that's okay, and you fight this weird dude with a conjoined twin. And I hate this boss fight. Very annoying. Very satisfied squishing his ass though. Final boss against the Furies and the Kraken is a chef's kiss classic God of War fun. But I will say my biggest critique of this game is some of the settings. And this is just my opinion, so it's not me stating a fact, but I really didn't dig the opening area of the game. I don't know, I really wasn't a big fan. We also come back to this area later in the chapters, and I still think it's I will say the whole Apollo statue areas are cool, and the final boss area is very nice. But that town area, not a fan. And unfortunately, you spend about a quarter of the game in that area. But it is what it is. Overall, Ascension is a fun game, but at the end of the day, it really didn't need to be made, and they really didn't add too many groundbreaking things to the gameplay. So for that, I'm placing it in the B tier. Still a good game though. You could throw someone who's never played a God of War game, and they could have a really fun time with Ascension.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Now there is no hope.
Let's take it back to where it all started, back in 2005, the birth of God of War for the PS2. The game actually aged pretty well. The cutscenes are extremely well animated and the gameplay is still very fun. Again, all the God of War games stem from this. It's just a build off of the original. I will say I love progressing through this game, from the fight with the Hydra, to the war between Athens and Ares, to climbing on Kratos' back, going through Pandora's temple. It's so much fun going through these areas and just exploring them. Their boss fights are simple with the big 3, the Hydra, the robotic Minotaur, and of course, Ares. And they're all very fun. I'll always say God of War 1 is like no other God of War game. Like, I mean, when you play Ascension, goes to Sparta, God of War 2, 3, they all have a similar theme, and God of War 1 does as well, but there's some wacky shit in this. Like Hades' goofy statue, the plank walk with spikes, the flesh walk with more spikes, the hell wall you climb in Hades. It's obstacles like this that you don't really see in any other God of War game. But unfortunately, I do have some gameplay gripes, and it's very similar to what a lot of people have gripes with this game. For example, the wall climbing, you can't drop fast, you have to go down slow. This is very nitpicky, but if you keep dying and you gotta move at this slow-ass pace, it gets really annoying. Also, this puzzle right here sucks. You move so incredibly slow and it derails the momentum of the game. Also, the plank walk is tedious as f***, and the Hades wall just made me want to shove glass in my eye. But outside of those parts, very good game. And the plot of this one is Kratos gets tricked by Ares into killing his family, Kratos feels guilt, ends up doing favors for the gods, and tries to get revenge against Ares. Also, the extras with the scrapped characters is pretty cool. And with all that together, I'll give my rating. Now, without taking this as the first game of the series, my rating would probably be a high B for this game, which is good. But since this was the OG and they still haven't perfected their craft yet and we're testing things out, and everything kind of built from this, it's kind of like the Mario 64 version of God of War. It's still a good game, but for 2005, the gameplay is very fun, it's a neat story, cutscenes are really cool, and it has a great setting. So for that, I'm placing God of War 1 in the A tier. Ghost of Sparta is considered by many the best spin-off game in the God of War series, and for good reason. It takes place after God of War 1 and just before God of War 2. We see Kratos, not sad and mopey how he is in Ascension, the Change of Olympus, and God of War 1. Instead, the dude is fucking pissed and wants to find his brother Deimos, who was kidnapped by Ares at a young age. Out of all the side games, I feel this adds most to Kratos' story. We get to see his mother and how she got cursed and turned into a monster. We see Kid Kratos being a menace, trying to toughen up his younger brother with tough love. He's just a little angry kid overall. Look at him. You even get to throw him at one point. Anyway, the gameplay is like usual. It's very good, and for me, I never played on PSP, I played on the PlayStation, but the gameplay was still pretty smooth and still fun. The Arms of Sparta weapon is such a nice addition. It's a spear and shield Kratos used back in the day. It's the most Spartan weapon you can get, and it has good combos. The Horn of Boris is just a wild-ass weapon. Spinning this thing around enemies equally awesome and hilarious. The opening boss on the boat is very God of War 1-like, as we storm our ship to fight a giant sea monster. Later down in the game, we get to fight our brother Deimos in a fight, and it's a rare time Kratos actually loses. However, he was going light on his bro, and for the climax of the game, we fight Thanatos, which is a great boss for the game in this series. Happy that you got to use the God of Death in this series. You and your bro settle your differences, team up, and fight Thanatos in the final boss battle, and he even turns into a giant monster. Overall, I don't have many issues with Ghost of Sparta. It's just a really, really good game. However, since this game is rather short and is on PSP, this game was also made after God of War, and the gameplay is really good, but it doesn't quite hit the level of God of War 3, and that's the only real criticism I have with this game. But other than that, it's a very good game, so I'm going to put Ghost of Sparta in the A tier. The newest of the God of War games, God of War Ragnarok. Does the game deliver from its predecessor in God of War 2018? Well, let's see. The game starts off amazing. We have a confrontation with Thor and Odin, and then we get to fight Thor. Absolutely amazing. Great start to the game. And then the game begins with Kratos and Atreus trying to prevent Ragnarok and destroying the goddamn world. Kratos done it once, and he doesn't want to do it again. We get great stuff with Freya as a heartbroken mother who wants revenge against Kratos. Atreus working with Thor, Odin, and Thor's daughter restoring the Mask of Creation. And of course Heimdall. And you know what I'm about to talk about with a gripe with this game, and it's a big gripe, and it's fair. It's the Atreus and Angerboda mission, and with a lot of dialogue and walking and talking and walking. Talking, you get it. And listen, I love mythology, and there's a lot of Norse mythology in this section, but fuck me, it's boring. And don't get me wrong, I like Atreus. He's good for a sidekick to Kratos, or even Thor, but when he's the main character, I just don't care too much. This section really drags the game. They could have cut this down by like 80%. They didn't need to make it this long. The overall gameplay for me is really fun. It's a build-off from God of War 2018. I think it's great. The Leviathan Axe and Blades of Chaos are a nice yin and yang type of combo, and the new weapon in this game, the spear. It's a very cool addition, truly ties into Kratos' past as a Spartan. I like Freya a lot, and her alliance with Kratos is very nice. We also get a lot of good dialogue with Kratos and Freya about his past. Thor in this game is great. Loved his character of a broken god, and both his boss fights are fun. And his scenes with Atreus are pretty good as well. My only gripe is I wish we saw more of Thor. He's a big antagonist slash anti-hero of this game, and I feel we didn't see enough of him. I just wish we can get a few more scenes with Thor, with Atreus, maybe Kratos, but you know, it is what it is. Also, Tyr is actually Odin, and he kills Brock, which was a nice twist in this game. And Heimdall's a great little shit who I love killing. And finally, the climax. Ragnarok was a bit short. It's the name of the game after all, but it wraps up pretty fast, and the final boss of Odin is good, but I prefer Thor's boss fights. The ending of Atreus and Kratos going separate ways, and Kratos seeing a portrait of himself being worshipped, I loved it. Overall, this game has really, really big highs, but some bad lows. But overall, it's still a great game. I know I kind of harped on it a little bit, but I'm still going to place God of War Ragnarok in the A tier. Oh mama, let's get into it. The sequel, the first God of War, and this one is truly the birth of Kratos that is referenced a lot in memes. And I know you're thinking, the birth of Kratos was born in God of War 1. No, you goober. You have to understand, the Kratos that we know that is angry and loud didn't really become a thing until God of War 2, where we see Kratos as a god. Arrogant and pissed off god at that.
Athena! You will...
Then we get one of the best intros ever, fighting the Colossus of Rhodes. And man, it's beautiful. Fully upgraded from God of War 1, feeling like a goddamn tyrant, fighting a 100-foot tall statue. Now this game also fixed the climbing issues of God of War 1, and got rid of the bullshit platforming from God of War 1 as well. The combat is as crisp as ever, just a smoother version of God of War 1. We even get to ride frickin' Pegasus too, like what? The plot of this game is Zeus betrays Kratos and kills him, but not before he comes back from the dead with the help of Gaia to exact his revenge against Zeus. Now, I don't want to spoil future entries, but God of War 2 is by far my favorite game to journey through. And don't get me wrong, you travel through a lot of areas in God of War 1, but God of War 2 just feels like a damn conquest. Like the giant horses, the Icarus part, going underground to say hi to Atlas, getting Zeus's backstory, Prometheus getting eaten by a bird, the Sisters of Fate. It's all so good. Believe it or not, when I first played God of War 2, I thought it was a good game, but nothing more. Then I played it a few months later, and I was like, damn, this shit's good. Then I replayed it like 4 or 5 times, and I was like, holy crap, this game is amazing. A very, very good game. I will say the final boss with Zeus, where he's a giant, is a bit lame, but they probably didn't want to spoil the Zeus fight for 2 and save it for God of War 3. And yeah, I really don't have any complaints with God of War 2. It's very clean and cut here, so I'm giving God of War 2 an S tier. No other words needed. Our final God of War spin-off game, Chains of Olympus, where we see Kratos before God of War 1 doing favors for the gods, and getting into some trouble along the way, and confronting his past. It's our first PSP game in the God of War series, and once again, I had to play at the PS5 because I don't got a PSP, and I really didn't want to use one in 2025. Just me though. The game starts off in a war, like usual, against the Persians? I guess the Greeks did fight the Persians in real life, so screw it. And your first boss is against the Persian king. And after defeating him, you get to use the Efreet, which is a demon from Arabian legend. Not even Greek, but a cool addition to the game nonetheless. I believe this is the only time we see another mythology in a main part of a God of War game in the Greek saga. Could be wrong though. Anyways, Chains of Olympus was made after God of War 2, but since it is a PSP game, the combat is good, but it felt a bit slow at times. And the graphics are, kind of look wonky. But besides that, we get some fun stuff. Like the story, which is pretty cool. Different gods and a titan teaming together to take over Olympus. It's pretty neat stuff. Kratos also gets to interact with his daughter in the Elysium and gives us the funniest QTE ever in God of War history. And the game also ties into the story of God of War 1 and 2, which is nice. And the final boss is pretty good, nothing special though. Overall, Chains of Olympus is a good game, but for these standards these games bring, it lacks the attributes of being a great God of War game. So for that, I'm placing it in the C tier.
My vengeance ends now.
Oh baby, we are finally at the end of the Greek saga, God of War 3. The first God of War on PS3, and we got a beauty. The graphics are updated and the combat is more advanced, and we go on a rampage. God of War 3 truly has the most brutality as we commit acts of genocide, regicide, decicide, and
avunculicide.
all the sides, really. God of War 3 gives you the most boss fights of any God of War game. The opening boss fight with Poseidon is great, ending with a little eye poke. We then journey through Hades and the Lost Souls, and a friend gives us a bow. Then, an eventual fight with Hades, which is easily my favorite boss fight in all the God of War games. So beautiful. The stuff with Helios is great, and we give him a free chiropractic job on his neck. Hermes' little bitch ass was fun. The boss fight with Hercules is so fun, and getting the gloves after the fight is awesome, because they're my favorite side weapon in any God of War game. They may have short range, but damn, they're fast. And of course, fighting your Gramps Kronos. The boss fight may not be the greatest, as you mostly face basic enemies, but the moment of being a grain of sand to this behemoth is nothing short of amazing, especially on the PS3. And the eventual fight with Zeus. There are 3 phases to his boss fight. The first phase is like Mortal Kombat. It's a side-scrolling fight, and I love it. The second phase, which is the longest, is the fight inside of Gaia, which is a bit lackluster if I'm being honest. It's still good, but compared to the fights with Hercules and Hades, they could have done better. The third phase isn't really a boss fight, it's just Kratos battling through his psyche to finally accept all the terrible things he's done and defeat Zeus. Awesome. But I do have a few gripes. Obviously, I've stated the second phase of the Zeus fight. I also have gripes with the block puzzle and keeping the chain safe so it doesn't break. And this can be really annoying. And the segment with flying, at first it's cool, but at the end of the game, I'm like, why are we doing this again? This is just not fun. And fighting Cerberus right here, like bro, I can't move. I can't move. He's a giant 3-headed dog. What do you want me to do? This part is a pain in the ass, especially if you're on hard mode. But other than that, that's all the gripes I have. Now, before I rank God of War 3, I want to talk about the story. Now, playing God of War 1, 2, and all the side games, then once you get to God of War 3, you will see there's a shit ton of plot holes, and there is. However, the story of Kratos in God of War 3 is amazing. It's barely explained through any dialogue, and it's just explained through his actions. We see a man's vengeance consume him to the point of, if it's even worth it, of getting revenge. We start with fighting Zeus, we're gonna kill him, rah! To getting ditched to Hades, then burning a man alive for no other reason other than to get a bow. And we saw Kratos kill civilians to get to Hermes, who we didn't really need to kill. Listen, he's annoying as heck, Kratos, but you didn't need to off him like that. Or just kill this random person right here because they're in his way. Then we see him use Poseidon's princess as a gate stopper to get a gate open. And you're like, Kratos, you did not need to use that woman as a gate stopper. I love you, buddy, but it was not necessary. Basically, revenge has consumed him to the point of blind murder. He went from, stay out of my way and I won't hurt you, to, if you glance at me, I will murk you. Then we see him meet up with Pandora, and he regains some humanity, and this humanity helps him defeat Zeus in the end. So, I don't know. I like the untold story of God of War 3. I might make a full video on it later, but who knows. Oh yeah, this game is easily going the S tier. Here we are. the final God of War game. God of War, or God of War 2018, because they just couldn't put a 4 in front of it. The soft reboot of the God of War series, which was a huge risk to take at the time, turning a hack-and-slash game known for its brutality and sex scenes to a third-person action-adventure about a man's guilt. Risky business, but it worked so well. God of War 2018, in my opinion, has the best story in all the God of War games. It's a basic story of Kratos and his son Atreus spreading ashes on a mountain, but it's told so well. We see Kratos struggling to raise a kid, being afraid his inner beast will come out and cause more destruction, and of course, good old trauma. And I don't want to harbor just in the story, because the combat is very good. Is it better than God of War 3's combat? In my opinion, no, but it is a different style that is really fun. Plus, the boss fights in this game are great. The 3 boss fights with Baldur are great and fun as hell. Magni and Modi are a nice change of pace in the boss fights and are really good. And this dragon fight is pretty cool as well. And yeah, they do rehash quite a bit of mini-bosses, which I can say is a little boring, but it doesn't ruin the game for me. God of War 2018 has a lot of side stories. Again, it's a very different style of God of War game. And I will say this, I am a whore for mythology. And yes, all the God of War games have mythology, but God of War 2018 is chock full of Norse mythology. Like the world serpent prophesies to fight Thor at Ragnarok, Atreus being Loki is heavily implied throughout the game. The way Baldur dies is very similar to how he dies in Norse mythology, and at the end of the game, you can see language in Old Norse calling Kratos a Norse mythology character named Farboti, who Kratos represents in this universe. I could go on, there is so much mythology in this game. If you're a big old Norse mythology nerd, you'll love this game. And I'm aware it's not fully accurate, but it's a video game at the end of the day. It doesn't need to be 100% accurate. This game also has a lot of good characters, like Mimir, or Head, the smartest man alive, Brock and Sindri. One's a helpful, sarcastic blue dwarf, and the other one is a scared and timid, helpful dwarf. And Frey is a great character who has great depth, and is oh mama, foxy. Overall, God of War 2018 is just a fantastic game. It looks beautiful, it plays great, the story's great, it's just a great-ass game. And for that, I will comfortably place God of War 2018 in the S tier. And that is it. This is my tier list on the God of War games. I also want to say that none of these games are bad. Even Chains of Olympus, which I put in the C tier, is still a good game. It's just the standards for these games are so high, that's why I put it in the C tier. But yeah, that's it. Do you like my list? Do you think it's terrible? Or maybe you just think it's alright? Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'm out of here. Goodbye.